Well, good morning, Northwest Church. It's so good to be together across the country, internationally, all online. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of the teams who have served here and make this community operate in the way that it does. There are so many people behind the scenes, and every summer we try and find a way to not only to celebrate those teams, but to also be able to give some space for them to enjoy their time together. And so, as you already know, as Pastor Jared has said, we're actually taking this Sunday and only doing it online. This is the first time we've done this since COVID. Do you remember those days? Oh my goodness, I'm sure many of you do remember those days, but really don't want to remember them at all. My name is Pastor Peter Brunton. If this is your first time with us, we're so glad you have joined us today, and we want to welcome you. We have some online pastoral team that would love to speak with you today. I know there's many of you tuning in around the country from, of course, across Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and I know we actually have some Northwest family up in Washington State and all the way to Scotland. So we're so glad you're with us today. Tell us where you're actually tuning in from. Put your name in the chat box. We really would like to connect with you, and I think it'd be cool for everyone to see how many of us are dialing in all around the world. I loved the testimony that we just have. We love to hear stories of what God is doing in your life. So please also tell us what your testimony is. What is God doing in your life? Reach out to someone, share your story. I think it's really important that we're able to encourage each other that way. Today, of course, we always start at our first Sunday of the month with our overflow update of what we're doing as a church. We've been doing so many things, and we built quite a much bigger vision for the church. We not only want to build new buildings, but we want to plant a new location, a new church every 2 years. And we have people working in the background. I don't have a huge amount of updates this Sunday or this month because there's just not a lot of exciting stuff to report. But you need to know we have a lot of people who are working in the background trying to get this whole building put together right now in Apopka. We're very excited about that. And of course, we're also working a lot in the background trying to grow Winter Garden, and we've really been seeing quite a lot of growth in Winter Garden and new families coming to experience Northwest Church in Winter Garden. So give us a big shout out, Winter Garden. We're so proud of what you're doing. You're doing a great job over there. And also, we're expanding a lot of what we're doing online. The team, I know we're saying we're giving our teams this Sunday off, but there are a few people who are working right now, and I'm grateful for the guys who are running the cameras or in the background right now, making this work. But we are really seeing a lot of even small groups and people connecting online around the country and around the world, and we think it's important to be connected. So we're seeing that happen, and we're just so grateful that you want to be a part of this. The progress of our building is moving forward, and as you know, in April, we started our initiative to raise $6.5 million, and you committed $6 million for the next 2 years, and I'm just so overwhelmed and grateful for that. So here is the update of where we're at. We're at $445,000, $715. That's just in the last 2 months, and all I can say is, wow. Crystal and I are really overwhelmed and just blown away with the generosity and the belief in the vision of what God has called us to do. And we're very excited by that. And if you've not been a part of that and you would like to be a part of it, and we want to invite you to be a part of it, jump on in, be a part of what we're doing, because we're not just trying to run a church here on a Sunday morning. We're really trying to help to expand the good things that God has given us and turn ourselves into an overflowing church that are starting to bring generosity and blessing to other communities, not only in our city, but around this country and around the world as well. And I could really stand here probably for most of the day telling you stories of what God is doing in us and through us. And so all I can say is jump in, and thank you to each and every one of you who have been so generous. Today we get to start a brand new series called Unplugged. Unplugged. Why are we doing that? Simply because we really want to celebrate the habit of knowing how to be disconnected from the busyness of life in order to help us become healthier. So this summer, we've been embracing winding down and vacationing and unplugging, and we shouldn't feel guilty for taking some time away from our responsibilities. And last month, if you remember, we talked about the models of having a healthy family, a healthy church, healthy men and healthy women. It's important that we know what that looks like. But this month, I want us to put it into action. I want us to put it into action that we look at how we actually go about unplugging and taking a measurement of how healthy we are. Do you remember your first car? I remember my first car. I think everyone remembers their first car, right? Because there's something special about that first car. It doesn't matter how much of a beater it was. Your first car is something that is seared in your memory as the first moment when you had that power of freedom to go wherever you wanted. Do you remember when you first got your license and maybe your parents needed some milk or something and you're like, I'll go get it. And you were so eager to go and help the family by getting a jug of milk a carton of milk to be able to bring it back. You were just so excited to be able to have that freedom. And I'm sure you remember what your first car was. In fact, why don't you go ahead and put it in the comments on whatever platform you're watching right now and tell us what your first car was so we can laugh at how old you are. Because, we had old cars back then. Here's my first car. Well, technically, I guess it wasn't mine, but it was the car that I was assigned by my family. We used to have, my parents, of course, were pastors, and they led a church in Scotland. But my brother started this sunbed business, this tanning bed business. Yes, believe it or not, in Scotland we actually can tan. I know it doesn't look like we can tan, but people will get tanning beds before they go on holidays or vacations where there's too much sun. That's what smart people did. And so my brother started this tanning bed company, and my parents were also a part of it. And they got to a place where they said, we don't really want to do it anymore. Peter, will you just run this tanning bed company? And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I can make money. Plus, I got this as my first car. And let me tell you, it may not have been the coolest car in town, but wow, I felt the freedom of having a car. And apparently, I became all my friends' best friend when they needed to move apartments, right? They needed to fill. I think we need to have a laugh track on this as well. If you can organize that, put laughter into this right now. I'm sure. I'm just kidding. But I'm sure you can see how I became all my friends' best friend when they needed to move apartment, because when you need to move somewhere, you need someone who's actually got some space. In America, you have pickup trucks. In Scotland, we didn't have pickup trucks. Then I came to America and I came across my wife, who wasn't my wife, and she had this beater. Yeah, this is called an Eagle. What's it called again? I think I wrote it down. This is such an ugly car. It's an Eagle. What was it called? I can't remember. Anyway, I can't remember. Oh, I think I can see the sign here. It's an Eagle. An Eagle was actually a French car that tried to come over to America. Look at this piece of junk right here. In fact, we went to Disney with a few friends, and she said, would you like to drive the car? And I said, sure. And we were driving down the highway, and suddenly the accelerator didn't work, right? We had to have the windows down in the middle of summer because there's no air conditioning, because this is how much of a beater it was. And my foot went to the ground. I'm like, it's not working. She's like, sometimes the accelerator cable falls off. I'm like, we're on the highway. You can't have an accelerator cable that's falling off. By the way, that's how much her parents loved her, right? To let her out on the highway with a car that was going to implode. But we had to pull off the highway, and then I had to crawl underneath the dashboard to try and hook it back on. Anyway, that's a junky car. I'm sure you had a junky car. Most people have junky cars, but anyone who knows cars know that you have to pay attention to the health of a car if you want to continue it to work. If you have to check the coolant, you have to check the oil and the air, and you have to make sure that these things are working. And if you're really quite an expert, you could be a mechanic, right? You know these mechanics that can just know what's wrong with your car just by listening to it. right? They just go, and they suck in the air through their teeth and go, ooh, that doesn't sound good. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. And you're like, what's wrong? It's just, it's fine. It's fine. They're like, no, it doesn't sound right. Can you hear that? Yeah, it doesn't sound right. Or you get enthusiasts, which I'm really into cars myself, and they can tell the size of an engine just by the sound of the engine. They're like, oh yeah, that's a V8 356 with a double head overcam shaft and a twin turbo and with a doodah on the side and 4 on the floor, and they have all these phrases, and you're like, how do you know so much about this car? But for the rest of us plebeians, for the rest of us peasants, we need gauges, right? We need to see gauges on our dashboard to tell us the health of our car. We need to pay attention to those gauges. Now, hands up who doesn't know what gauges really do on your screen, on your dashboard. Maybe you know the gas needle. You can tell that. But today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a game with you today as we're going through this whole series of being unplugged. And this game is called "What's That Warning Light?" What is that warning light? Here's the warning lights that are on your dashboard, and it's going to be a test for all of you. And as a family, you can try and shout out what you think each of these warning lights are. It's going to start off as easy, and it's going to move to hard, okay? So here's the first warning light. The first warning light, what is that? At home, what is it? That's right, it's the battery. It tells you the battery is being overtaxed, or it's being used at the start when you're starting your car up. That's the battery symbol. Very good. Here's the second one. Second one is this. What is it? That's the dipped beam. That's correct. Not the full beam, not the high beam, but the dipped beam. Well done. And now put in the comments if you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 7. Tell us at the end of this how far you got into this. Okay, here's the next one. Third one. What is that? That's right. That's the low windshield fluids, telling you you don't have enough water in your, what my mother used to call the scooshers to the window. I don't know why she called it that, but she did. Here's where are we at? Number 4. Number 4. What is this? What is this? That's right. That's called detecting the cars that are on the side of it. Phil Chang's here laughing at me going, you don't even know what that is, do you? What's it called again, Phil? I can't remember. It's blind spot. That's right. It's called the blind spot detector. I'm not doing well myself. Okay, where are we? Is that number 4? I think we're at number 5. Now, this is where it's getting a little bit difficult. And if you're in the construction industry, you'll know exactly what this is. What is it? Say it out loud. That's right. It's called the coils for diesel engines. Ooh, now we're getting hard. Okay, here's number 6. Now we're getting harder. What is this one? Ooh, that's a difficult one for many of you. Phil Chang, who's with me right now, he knows exactly what that is because he used to be a mechanic himself. That is adaptive suspension. Ooh, now you have to be as wealthy as maybe Ben Strombeck to have a nice fancy car that can actually have adaptive suspension that goes up and down. Okay, here's the last one. This is a really important one. And if you don't know this one, you shouldn't be allowed to actually drive a car. What is this one? Do you know? Shout it out. That's right. That's the maintenance light. And it tells you there's something up with your car and it's time to get it checked out. It's not the check engine warning light. It's a maintenance one saying it's time to have everything checked. So tell us if you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you got 6 or 7, and we'll send you a prize. I don't know if that's true. But anyway, the prizes for those who got all 7 correct, well done to you. Today, I want to look at the gauges of our lives that we need to watch. When Jesus was a young boy, he became, in Jewish tradition, when you turn 12 or 13 years old, you then switch over from being raised by your mother, to being raised by your father and the men in the community. And when he was with the men in the community, his mother lost him in the temple, and she was looking for him, and his father was looking for him. Where were you? And he said, you should have known where I was. I was with the men. And it says this in Luke chapter 2, verses 52. It talks about who Jesus was and how he impressed the men around him, how he impressed the elders with his healthy growth. And it describes 4 attributes in this scripture in Luke chapter 2, verses 52. And it says, Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. This is a very specific scripture to describe exactly the character, the behavior, and the health of who Jesus was. And see, we see 4 things. And I'm going to look at these 4 things, and we're going to call them the RPMs of a healthy life. RPMs, and each letter stands for one of the gauges that I believe that we have to measure ourselves by. Many of you came with us to a community here, a conference here in this community called the Exponential Conference. And if you've never been to it, I'd love you to be a part of it. It's really quite an amazing, encouraging conference that helps you to really discover how to grow the church, how to grow the kingdom of God, and how to grow yourself. And here's the 4 RPMs that they talked about that I want to talk about too. The first one is this. It is the relational gauge. In Luke 2, verses 52, it says, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in the favor with man. He grew in favor with man. That means his relationships became healthy. Relationships can be the most fulfilling and draining part of our lives. And I'm sure many of you are saying amen right now. Just don't look at your spouse when you say that, only when it comes to the fulfilling part. Just say, yes, it's so fulfilling to be in this marriage. And those that are closest to you get the best of you and the worst of you, right? They get the best of you and the worst of you. You can show the best of yourself to your friends and your neighbor, and everyone thinks you're awesome. But when you go home, those that are closest to you actually see the worst of you as well as the best of you. That's just the way it is. But most of us, I think, really work hard to preserve our relationships and to try and keep them healthy. But oftentimes, many of them just break down. Many of you have been through broken relationships where you've lost family or you've lost spouses because the relationships just broke down. But I don't believe that most people intentionally try to break the relationships. For most, it's an issue of the drift. For most of us, it's the issue of the drift, right? Rejection. Maybe you go through you're in a relationship and someone says something or does something and it makes you feel maybe just a little bit hurt. You have rejection, and rejection leads to that feeling of hurt. But then hurt leads to maybe you looking for a pattern where that other person is repeatedly hurting you and repeatedly rejecting you. And when that pattern starts to materialize, it then leads to distrust. And then distrust leads to more of a distance. And then the distance leads to isolation. But God has designed us for good, healthy relationship. That's how the way that we're meant to actually grow. And we need each other in these relationships. But if we go to a place of isolation, we're now being set up for a fall in our lives. I just had I had 2 different conversations where I heard about 3 pastors this week who have just recently fallen to something. One of them fell to having a relationship with the worship director and ran off with this woman. And then I heard of another pastor who actually had an emotional affair. One of the leaders called me and we need some help, because our pastor has had an emotional affair. And it's just heartbreaking to hear that. And I heard of another pastor here in Orlando who just got caught soliciting a child. How does this happen? How do we get to this place? We're pastors who are meant to be an example of being a picture of health because they've dedicated their life to Christ and following the Father. How is it they've gotten to this place? I think it's simply because the relationships weren't deep enough to share their real struggles, right? We don't really want to look like we're weak. We don't really want to share all our real struggles. But these things of falling off into a really terrible place of doing bad things to ourselves and to our families didn't happen overnight. It became a drift. We stopped measuring how healthy our relationships were, and we stopped maintaining ourselves and maintaining our relationships. The challenge I have for you this morning is, what is your relational gauge telling you? What is the strength of your closest relationships? Do you have the right people filling you up? Do they know your weaknesses and hold you accountable? A few months ago, my wife got a text from someone who knows us, doesn't come to our church, and said that they saw that her husband, was caught in public having an affair with someone in a restaurant. And my wife texted back and said, we don't take accusations like this without evidence. What is it you're talking about? And so they came back and said, well, he was seen with this young woman with long brunette hair, and he was at this restaurant on this day at this time. And I'm like, what is going on? I said, Crystal, it's going to be very easy to be able to measure this. Tell me what the date was and where it was. And I went onto my Google Maps, and it tracks where I am. I have a tracker. I allow Google to track me. Maybe you don't like that, but I do. It helps to be able to show exactly where I am, helps me to be accountable. And we're able to know exactly where I was, match it up to my calendar. I was out for lunch with my daughter. So I decided I wanted to text these people back and say, what are you doing? I wanted to blast them with some comeback, right? To be able to say, how dare you bring this type of thing up with such weak accusation? Do you not know who I am? And I wanted to blast them. And so what I did is I took that text and I sent it to one of my close friends, and I said, can you review this before I sent it? And he read it and he said, don't send it. And I said, why not? And he goes, because that's not the right spirit. That's not the right heart. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. It's not. We need close people who can keep our gauges in the healthy part and not allow us to go to the unhealthy part and go say and do things we shouldn't be doing. The second gauge is this. It is the physical gauge. The physical gauge, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature. I love that word, stature. Stature basically means this. It means something physical and moral. It's your physical presence and your moral presence, if you look it up in the dictionary. And I love that those two things, and I think it's very interesting that those two things are somehow connected together. Gauging your physical self is about stewarding your body, stewarding your energy, and your reserves. If you have low physical health, it affects you mentally, it affects you spiritually, it affects you relationally. And being burned out can make you do and say things you shouldn't, and things that you'll actually end up regretting. There's a big question I often ask people, and that is, what do you do for fun? And it's amazing how many people go, well, I'm not too sure. It's amazing how many people say they don't actually have something that they do for fun. You need to be able to do something that makes you feel physically alive, that's healthy for you. That's why it's important to exercise. It's important to get into the yard, to feel the physical things that God has created, to feel nature, to feel the wind on your face, to feel water. It's important to be able to let your body feel like you love it. And maybe it's time that many of you get accountable of being healthy. Maybe you have to examine how you eat. Maybe you have to get a coach. Maybe you're going to have to put yourself into a position to take your body to the next level so that you can be responsible to be here for your children, your grandchildren, and to be able to do the things that God has called you to do. The challenge with this gauge is, what is your physical gauge telling you? What are your sleep patterns like? What is your eating habits like? What are your exercise routines? Do you even have a sustainable rhythm for rest and time off? Your body needs it. And I know this is important because I struggle with workaholism. It's easy for me just to keep going, and then my body goes, we're done. We can't give anymore. And then I crash, and then maybe I'm sick, or maybe my back is out. Maybe I push myself too much. It's my body telling me, we need you to give us some attention. This is an important part. The stature is a physical thing. It's a moral thing. Somehow those two things are connected together, because when you're physically worn out, you'll say and do things that you shouldn't do. When your body is worn down, your heart is worn down, you'll start doing things you shouldn't do. Here's the third thing. The third one is the mental gauge. In Luke 2:52, and Jesus grew in wisdom. Wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the proper use of knowledge. It's good to have knowledge, but it's easy to have lots of knowledge but actually be an empty person, not being able to help people to grow in the right ways of Christ. Wisdom is the proper use of knowledge, and I believe that manifests in two different ways. The first one is it's about learning, right? You need to keep challenging yourself mentally. It's important to stretch your brain. Do a crossword, go do a new course, read a book, learn new things. My mother used to say, every day is a school day. You know what it's like when you left school and you're like, I'll never have to go back to school. But if you want to grow, you have to keep learning. You have to keep pushing yourself. We must be constantly learning. But the second thing that wisdom is about, it's not just about learning, it's also about the regulation of your thought life. The regulation of your thought life. The devil wants to torment your thoughts. And many of you struggle with that. Many of you even have mental health challenges. It is a physical problem of the chemistry of your brain. But it's also an internal, emotional problem that many of us have, and that is that we can't control our thoughts because we haven't submitted them to Christ. And so the enemy sees the fertile ground of your mind and just starts putting in accusations or starts putting in depression. Listen, these are real things. We have a real enemy. We have a real challenge. But we must examine ourselves. Are we putting our mind in the right place? We should even consider examining the culture of your family. What is it that you grew up with? What did your parents say or not say to you? Were they encouraging to you? Were they not encouraging to you? Do you have a tape recorder in your head? You need to examine your mental life. What's your mental thoughts like? Am I dealing with things or living with things and not actually paying attention to that gauge that's saying, I'm on low, I need some help. I need you to actually fill up my tank. I need you to fill up my mind so that I can have peace in my mind. There's a woman recently who was talking about how she was a second-born child. Actually, she was a twin. And she grew up in South America, so they didn't know that the mother actually had twins in the womb. And she said, I was unexpected. And so the guy that was counseling her, said, you were unexpected. What does that mean to you? And she said, well, they didn't want me. They weren't expecting me. And so now they had to change their lives in order to make room for me. And he goes, have you ever gotten a gift before? And she said, yes. And he goes, was it an unexpected gift? And she said, yes. And he said, then why can't you be an unexpected gift? And she just started to weep because she realized that she was looking at the reality of her life in the wrong way. We all think in our minds, this is the way it is. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Or this other person doesn't love me enough. And so what we do is we then focus on things that make us angry or feel rejected or feel hurt. And then we start manifesting our life around that thing. When the fact is, God is saying He wants you to renew your mind. The challenge is the mental gauge. The mental gauge, what is it telling you? Do you have a cluttered, stressed mind that results in a reactive, short-sighted decision-making process that you start to do things in a reaction towards how you think about yourself? How do you actually feel? How are you actually feeling about yourself? What thoughts dominate your mind? Are you continuing to learn? Do you even dream about the future? If your answers are not good to these questions, it's time to take some energy and put it towards your mind. You should consider mentorship. You should consider getting counseling. I don't need counseling. I don't have any problems. Yeah, but maybe you need to grow. Maybe everything's not bad right now, but maybe you need to be pushed. Maybe you need to be examined. An unexamined life, I've heard, is not worth living. We must examine ourselves. The last gauge, of course, is the spiritual gauge. The spiritual gauge. RPMs, relational, physical, mental, and now spiritual. It says that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in the favor with God. Favor with God. What a wonderful thing that is. And I believe that the favor with God is the foundation of everything. Your mind, your body, your soul, your relationships are all affected, I think, primarily about how you feel about yourself and how you think about God. We have to have that intimacy with God. Why? Because whatever's inside of you will reproduce yourself in other people around you. If you have a lens of rejection, you'll experience everything with rejection. Think about it. Think about someone that you know that when you talk to them, they exhaust you. You're just tired after talking to them because all they do is talk about how bad their life is and how bad everyone else is. They're more to be pitied and scorned, I believe, but that exhausts everything around them because they're just looking through a lens of rejection. The same is true for anger or for fear or for lust or for sadness. If that's what dominates your life, you're going to see everything through that lens and you're going to start affecting everything else around you. We spend time with God because it attracts the things of God to us. We spend time with God because it attracts the things of God to us. We need to make no room in our life for chaos. Fill it with God. Spend time with God. Ask Him what He thinks about you. Ask Him what He wants for you. What is our spiritual gauge telling you? Are you protecting your time for spiritual practice? Is your core identity rooted in God rather than in your roles? Most cars will break down eventually. And they break down because of two reasons. Firstly, because of wear and tear. Your body is the same. Your mind is the same. Your spirit is the same. But secondly, they break down because of lack of maintenance. Is your life gauges showing signs of needing attention? Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1 says this: we must pay the most careful attention to what we have heard, so that we do not, what does that word say at home? What does it say? Say it to someone right beside you. So that we do not drift away. No one intentionally tries to break down. No one tries to have a bad day. But what they do is they often drift away. They drift into broken relationships. They drift into broken minds. This month, we want to help you to stay on course to be healthy. What is that warning light telling you? What is your relational warning gauge telling you? Your mental, your physical, your spiritual. What are they telling you? We want you this whole month, as we're examining this together, to start examining how are each of my gauges. Don't do it just once a year. Don't even do it once a month. I think you should do it at least once a week, if not every day. Measure these gauges. Here are the small group questions, and we will put them on our internal communication band for you to be able to know. Listen, I'm so grateful that you've joined us here today. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I'm so grateful for this community, and I want to make sure that you are healthy, your family is healthy, the church is healthy, so we can go plant healthy churches. Father in heaven, we're so grateful for what you've brought to us, all the good things. Help us now, Father, to be responsible, to look after our relationships, to look after our body, to look after our mind, and to look after our hearts, our spirit with you. Fill us with your spirit, we pray. And I pray, God, wherever our family is, around this state, this country, and around this world, that you would touch them where they're at right now as they're closing their eyes and they're saying, Father, fill me with your spirit. Now teach me where the different areas of my life that I need to pay attention to. I pray, God, that you would touch them now in your precious Son's name. And all God's people said at home, amen. We love you and we hope to see you very soon. God bless you.